It began with a number that stunned even Apple's own fraud analysts, more than $16,700,000 in losses, vanishing not through hacking, data breaches, or rogue employees, but through something far more mundane. Fake devices. Thousands of them, each one carefully crafted to look like a real iPhone, each one sent to Apple under the guise of a warranty claim, and each one quietly exchanged for a brand new, genuine device that disappeared into the hands of a single network. The operation stretched from California to Nevada, from Oregon to New York, and its fingerprints eventually traced back to a soft-spoken technician named Zhongshan Tim Xu, a man whose small repair shop hid a scheme that fooled one of the most sophisticated companies on Earth thousands of times over. The footage from his arrest shows a man standing calmly at an Apple Store counter in Sacramento, holding a phone that appeared legitimate in every way except one. The IMEI had been cloned from a real device somewhere else in the world. What Apple employees didn't know, what no one suspected, was that Xu was part of a coordinated Chinese return fraud ring that had quietly exploited Apple's global warranty system for years. The question investigators faced was unsettling. How did a handful of people manage to outsmart a trillion-dollar company with nothing more than counterfeit devices and shipping labels? To answer that, we have to return to the moment the illusion was born, long before the first box ever reached an Apple warehouse. Before Zhongshan Tim Xu became the center of a multi-million-dollar investigation, he was known simply as the quiet repairman in Sacramento, a man who could fix a shattered iPhone screen in minutes and revive water-damaged devices most technicians would declare dead. He carried himself with the humility of someone grateful to stay unnoticed. Soft voice, thin frame, no luxury watches, no flashy cars. His workshop, tucked inside a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax prep office, looked like any other small-town tech shop. Cluttered desks, tangled cables, a drawer filled with old iPhone parts. Customers trusted him because he didn't try to impress them. He seemed honest, capable, a good immigrant making an honest living. But the illusion went deeper. Xu cultivated a reputation among the local Chinese community as a hardware expert, a man who understood the inner life of the iPhone, the logic board, the baseband, the power IC, the true identity of every device encoded in its IMEI. When international students brought in phones purchased secondhand, Xu would explain how Apple's warranty system worked, why certain devices could still be replaced, and how to properly document issues. It sounded like guidance. In reality, it was grooming, training the first generation of runners who would later assist his network. To outsiders, Xu's shop was a place where broken phones were resurrected. But to those he trusted, Xu hinted at something much bigger: access to special suppliers in Guangdong, shipments of parts that even Apple couldn't distinguish, beau marque and faceplates that mirrored official components down to the microscopic alignment of solder points. He spoke of return policies, loopholes, warranty scripts, and diagnostic quirks he had studied obsessively. And just like that, the illusion formed. The belief that what he was offering wasn't crime, it was strategy, a smart hack of $1 billion system. For months, everything looked legitimate. Students brought him phones to check warranty eligibility. He returned with boxes sealed from Apple. The clients believed they had simply gotten lucky. Word spread quickly. Xu had connections. Xu understood the system. Xu could work magic with broken devices. Online forums in Chinese communities from Los Angeles to Seattle mentioned him as the man who could help you reset your luck when an old iPhone started failing. But inside Xu's workshop, something else was happening. Packages from Shenzhen arrived weekly, filled with iPhone shells and logic boards engineered to carry the IMEI of genuine devices in Apple's global database. They were not fakes in the way most people understood the term. They were replicas designed to deceive the most automated parts of Apple's diagnostic process. For a long time, it worked. Every fake device Xu sent back was accepted, processed, and exchanged for a new, genuine unit. Then one day, an Apple technician noticed something strange. A serial number that belonged to a device Apple had never sold in the United States. The first crack in the illusion. When investigators finally pieced together how Zhongshan Tim Xu executed his scheme, they realized it wasn't a simple warranty loophole. It was a fully engineered system that treated Apple's global repair network like a predictable machine. Xu's genius wasn't in forging devices himself. It was in building a supply chain and workflow so seamless that Apple processed thousands of fraudulent returns without suspecting a thing. The operation began in Shenzhen, where skilled counterfeit manufacturers produced what insiders called high-grade iPhone shells. Replicas so precise that even trained technicians couldn't distinguish them at a glance. These shells came with cloned IMEI numbers lifted from real devices that had been damaged, resold, or exported overseas. By tying each fake phone to the identity of a legitimate Apple product, Xu ensured that the automated systems inside Apple's repair pipeline would identify the device as eligible for replacement. Once the fake iPhones arrived in California, Xu's team disassembled them and inserted defective logic boards, essentially turning the devices into convincing dead units. They simulated hardware failures Apple commonly replaced under warranty: baseband failure, battery expansion, unexpected shutdown, boot loop, and audio IC malfunction. Every defect was intentional. Every failure had a purpose. The goal wasn't to fix a phone, it was to trigger Apple's exchange protocol. Xu recruited students, visiting relatives, and recent immigrants to act as return runners. Each person carried one or two fake devices to an Apple store or authorized repair center, explaining a simple story. This stopped working, it's still under warranty. The runners didn't need technical knowledge. All they needed was an ID and the ability to appear frustrated and confused at the Genius Bar. Xu handled everything else. What made the scheme nearly undetectable was Apple's own efficiency. To handle millions of returns worldwide, Apple relied heavily on automated diagnostic tools. If the IMEI scanned as genuine if the device failed to boot, and if the internal sensors reported hardware issues, the system authorized a replacement. Under pressure to maintain customer satisfaction scores, store employees rarely questioned a dead device that passed basic checks. And so the swaps continued, week after week, month after month. Xu's runners walked out of stores in Sacramento, Roseville, Las Vegas, Portland, and San Diego, carrying brand new iPhones sealed in factory boxes. These genuine devices were then resold through Chinese brokers operating out of Los Angeles and Nevada, where they were shipped back to China or flipped through electronics markets for thousands of dollars each. The profit margin was staggering. A fake iPhone shell cost less than $100, and a genuine replacement unit sold for over $900, sometimes more. But fraud at this scale leaves a data trail. By late 2018, Apple's internal analytics team noticed an anomaly, an unusually high volume of warranty claims tied to specific IMEIs appearing in multiple states. Even stranger, many of these devices seemed to originate from customers who shared similar backgrounds, phone numbers, and mailing addresses. For the first time, the pattern hinted that Apple wasn't dealing with random warranty abuse. It was facing a coordinated return fraud ring. What Apple didn't yet know was that the devices being returned were only the visible part of a much larger network, one that was expanding beyond California and operating with the precision of a multinational enterprise. And just as the company began assembling its internal report, a shipping label arriving in Portland exposed the first clue that would unravel the entire operation. What began as a local operation in Sacramento soon expanded far beyond anything Zhongshan Tim Xu could have achieved alone. As Apple's replacement pipeline proved easier to exploit than expected, Xu built a regional network that stretched across multiple states, recruiting new runners, expanding storage hubs, and moving devices through a rotation so dense that no Apple store ever saw the same person twice in the same week. The illusion of randomness became the foundation of the empire. Xu first targeted Nevada, sending trusted associates to open repair fronts in Las Vegas, where high tourist turnover and large malls made it easy to blend in. A runner could walk into an Apple store with a dead phone, request an exchange, and disappear into a crowd of thousands without drawing any suspicion. When shipments of genuine devices became too large to store safely in Sacramento, Xu rented storage units outside the city, paying cash and rotating lock codes frequently. Inside these units were shelves lined with sealed Apple boxes, rows of brand new iPhones worth more than the average American home. By 2019, Xu had set up contacts in Oregon and Washington, two states with fewer Apple stores but longer processing times, making employees more reliant on automated checks. He also began sending devices directly to Apple's mail-in centers, exploiting the company's remote warranty program. A single apartment in Portland received more than 240 devices in 8 months, each one approved, replaced, and mailed back before anyone questioned why a single address generated so many returns. Meanwhile, Xu's operation adopted the aesthetics of success. Associates posted photos on Chinese social platforms beside BMW X5s, Mercedes GLCs, and designer shopping bags, calling themselves global resellers. None of it reflected their real income. The cars were leased, the clothes borrowed, the apartments temporary. But the curated lifestyle helped them recruit more runners, students looking to make quick money, travelers in need of cash, and newcomers seeking community inside unfamiliar cities. The operation scaled rapidly. Xu introduced a scheduling system so no store would be visited too frequently. He allocated IMEIs, like inventory, assigning 2 or 3 to each runner and tracking which serial numbers had been used, replaced, or retired. He knew which Apple stores were strict and which were overwhelmed. He knew which errors in Apple's diagnostic tools could be exploited. It was a business mapped with the precision of a supply chain executive. But as the network grew, so did the trail. Apple's fraud detection systems began identifying clusters of returns from the same IMEI blocks. Some devices scanned in Las Vegas carried the same identity as devices submitted weeks earlier in San Diego. In one case, an IMEI associated with a device originally sold in China suddenly reappeared in Portland, flagged by Apple's internal database as geographically impossible. The turning point came when a single package arrived at an Apple repair facility with an IMEI that matched a device reported stolen months earlier, complete with a shipping label traced back to one of Xu's mail drop locations. It was the thread investigators needed. Behind the scenes, the FBI, HSI, and Apple's internal global security team began comparing return logs, shipping manifests, and passport names used at multiple Genius Bar appointments. The same patterns kept emerging: similar handwriting, similar accents, similar return scripts. And then came the line that shifted the entire case. This looks coordinated. And for the first time, federal agents realized they weren't looking at isolated retail fraud. They were staring at a multi-state criminal enterprise engineered with the efficiency of a multinational logistics chain. And what they uncovered next would lead directly to the downfall of the man who believed he could outsmart Apple forever. The collapse of Zhongshan Tim Shu's empire began with something almost embarrassingly small, a mislabeled package. It was an ordinary cardboard box dropped off at a FedEx location in Elk Grove, bearing a carefully printed return label and addressed to Apple's mail-in repair center. But when technicians scanned the IMEI, the system flashed a red warning. This device's identity matched an iPhone that had already been replaced 3 months earlier. Worse, the address used for the return had appeared in 2 other suspicious shipments tied to warranty abuse cases in Portland and Las Vegas. The anomaly was forwarded to Apple's internal global security team, who flagged it as a potential link in an increasingly familiar pattern. Within days, Apple escalated the case to HSI Sacramento, which had already been quietly monitoring unusual return clusters. Investigators pulled surveillance from Apple stores across multiple states and matched faces, timestamps, and travel routes. Their discovery was stunning. The same group of Chinese nationals, using different IDs, different outfits, and sometimes different hairstyles, had walked into more than 30 Apple stores across the West Coast over a 15-month span. The runners weren't random customers, they were coordinated. Undercover agents began tailing runners from Genius bar counters to parking lots, where they were seen meeting with Shu's associates. Some handed over sealed replacement devices, others pocketed cash. From there, the agents followed the cars back to a nondescript garage in South Sacramento, one Shu had rented under an alias. What they found inside was the clearest evidence yet of a criminal network. Rows of empty iPhone boxes, stacks of counterfeit shells from Shenzhen, printer labels, glue guns, soldering stations, and dozens of fake devices waiting to be returned. But the decisive break came from a man inside Shu's own circle, a young technician who claimed Shu owed him months of pay. Angry and afraid the operation was collapsing, he approached an Apple Store manager with a whispered confession. Shu was sending people to return fake phones and receiving genuine units in exchange. He provided photos of the workshop, spreadsheets tracking IMEIs, and voice messages where Shu coached runners on how to speak to Apple employees. The confession was passed to HSI, which combined it with digital evidence and prepared for a raid. On a cold morning in March 2020, agents moved. HSI, FBI, and local law enforcement surrounded Shu's workshop. They watched as Shu arrived with a backpack containing 4 fake iPhones and a stack of pre-printed Apple return labels. When officers approached, Shu froze, not with panic, but with the realization that the system he had mastered for years had finally turned against him. Inside the workshop, agents seized more than 300 counterfeit devices, over 200 genuine iPhones waiting to be shipped out, dozens of cloned logic boards, and shipping manifests detailing hundreds of fraudulent returns. Federal prosecutors later announced that Zhu and his accomplices had submitted more than 10,000 fake warranty claims, causing over $16,700 in losses to Apple. Several defendants pled guilty, others fled the country. Zhu himself faced multiple felony counts including mail fraud, wire fraud, and trafficking in counterfeit goods. But the investigation exposed a deeper mystery, one far more troubling than the arrest itself. Apple's audit revealed that more than 2,000 genuine replacement devices connected to Shu's operation had never been recovered. They had been sold off, shipped overseas, or absorbed into black market distribution channels stretching from California to Hong Kong and Dubai. And that raised the question investigators could not answer. If one small network caused $16 million in damage, how big was the system hiding behind it? What investigators uncovered after Zhongshan Tim Shu's arrest was far more unsettling than the fraud itself. Shu wasn't a mastermind operating in isolation. He was a node in a larger architecture, a system of counterfeit suppliers, IMEI forgers, device brokers, and money couriers that stretched across borders and operated with the precision of an underground logistics empire. When agents began reviewing Shu's seized phones and shipping records, they found names that didn't appear in any US indictment. Suppliers in Shenzhen, middlemen in Guangzhou, warehouse owners in Hong Kong, and buyers in Dubai who paid premium prices for brand new iPhones with clean serial numbers. Shu was neither the beginning nor the end. He was the bridge connecting all of them. The counterfeit devices at the heart of the scheme came from specialized workshops in Futian and Huaqiangbei, districts known for electronics markets where legitimate components sit side by side with replicas engineered to deceive global brands. These workshops didn't produce cheap knockoffs. They manufactured service-grade replicas designed specifically to exploit warranty systems. Technicians there had access to scrapped Apple parts, donor boards, and the tools needed to imprint cloned IMEI numbers onto counterfeit logic boards. In Shu's messages, they were referred to simply as the factories. The genuine iPhones Shu obtained were equally valuable to overseas buyers. In Hong Kong, traders paid cash for devices still wrapped in factory seal, then moved them through parallel import channels into mainland China, where taxes and supply shortages kept prices high. Some were routed to Dubai, where bulk electronics dealers purchased US region iPhones to resell across the Middle East and Africa. The flow was constant, structured, and profitable. Every new device Shu shipped out supported an international supply chain built on the shadows of the legitimate smartphone market. Investigators also discovered something unexpected. Several IMEI numbers used by Shu matched devices linked to other Apple return fraud rings previously dismantled in New Jersey, Texas, and Florida. This overlap suggested the existence of IMEI brokers, individuals who collected device identities from repair shops, recycling centers, and gray market sellers, then resold them in bulk to fraud rings worldwide. These brokers operated quietly, rarely handling physical devices themselves. Their product was digital, identities, serials, and histories scraped from dead or exported phones. Without these identities, Shu's fake devices would never have passed Apple's automated checks. Why do operations like Shu's keep emerging? Investigators point to a combination of factors. Apple's global warranty system processes millions of devices each year, making manual verification impossible. Automated diagnostics, while efficient, are vulnerable to high-quality replicas. Meanwhile, the demand for genuine iPhones in China, where parallel import markets thrive, creates a lucrative incentive for counterfeit networks. Add to that the stable pipeline of students and new immigrants willing to act as runners for quick cash, and the ecosystem sustains itself even when one ring collapses. The most unsettling theory came from analysts who examined the financial flows tied to Shu. A significant portion of the profits did not remain in the United States, nor did they return to China through recorded channels. Instead, they traveled through underground banking conduits, settling in untracked renminbi balances accessible only through private brokers. Some experts believe these funds eventually feed into broader illicit markets, cross-border tax evasion, capital flight networks, and even the procurement of parts for new counterfeit production. And that leaves investigators with one chilling question. If a single repair shop owner could help steal more than $16 million in genuine devices, how many others, equipped with better suppliers, smarter technology, and deeper funding, are doing the same thing right now, hidden in plain sight? In the end, the story of Zhongshan Tim Shu is not just about counterfeit devices or warranty abuse. It is a story about how a global system designed for convenience, speed, and trust can be turned against itself with nothing more than precision, patience, and a handful of forged components. Apple lost more than $16 million, but the real cost was the vulnerability his operation exposed. A trillion-dollar company brought down not by hackers or insiders, but by people who understood how to quietly manipulate the seams of its own machinery. The devices Xu returned were fake, but the damage they caused was very real. Thousands of genuine iPhones vanished into a parallel market, feeding supply chains that still operate in the shadows. And while Xu's arrest brought one network down, it also revealed the uncomfortable truth that these rings do not end with a single mastermind. They replicate, adapt, and reappear anywhere the incentives remain strong and the oversight remains thin. What this case leaves behind is a warning. We expect danger to come from complex code, sophisticated breaches, or high-tech sabotage. But sometimes, the most damaging threats come from the simplest acts: an IMEI cloned, a label printed, a return processed without question. The kind of threat that looks ordinary until it is too late to stop. You've been watching China Classified. Until the next case, stay aware.